Well, I think we've got a double dose of good news today for Britain. We've got strong growth figures, actually the strongest growth in this part of the year for a decade. And at the same time, we've just heard that the country's credit rating has been secured. And I think this underpins confidence in the economy. I think it is a vote of confidence in the government's economic policies. And I think it gives us the confidence now to look to the future with some optimism.
But even with these growth figures, you have to admit that your cuts programme hasn't come in yet. VAT will rise next year. Job losses haven't happened yet. Things could get worse.
Well, I think what you see today is a double dose of good news for the British economy. First of all, strong growth figures, actually the strongest growth for this part of the year that we've seen in a decade. And also, we've just heard that the country's credit rating, which had been put at risk by the previous government, has been secured. Now, both those things will underpin confidence in the recovery, and I think they are also a vote of confidence in the new government's economic policies.
Do you still worry about a double-dip recession?
Well, I think what you see today in an uncertain global economic environment is Britain growing strongly, the strongest growth we've seen in this part of the year for a decade, and also our country's credit rating being secured. That's a big vote of confidence in the UK and a vote of confidence in the coalition government's economic policies.
The experts said that your cuts were unfair, and now in the first opinion poll, they're showing also people think they're unfair. Do you have a problem with that?
Look, I think people know that this country had some serious economic problems and that the debt problem had to be dealt with. They see a new government has come in and dealt decisively with it. And now today, we've got this double dose of good news. First of all, strong growth figures, but also the country's credit rating reaffirmed and secured when it had been put at risk by the previous Labour government. And I think that will underpin confidence in the recovery going forward.
These strikes are wrong at a time when negotiations are still going on. But parents and the public have been let down by both sides because the government has acted in a reckless and provocative manner. After today's disruption, I urge both sides to put aside the rhetoric, get round the negotiating table and stop it happening again.
I listened to your speech in Wrexham and you talked about the Labour Party being a movement. A lot of people in that movement are the people who are on strike today, and they'll be looking at you and thinking, well, you're describing these strikes as wrong. Why aren't you giving us more leadership as a leader of the Labour movement?
At a time when negotiations are still going on, I do believe these strikes are wrong. And that's why I say both sides should, after today's disruption, get round the negotiating table, put aside the rhetoric and sort the problem out. Because the public and parents have been let down by both sides. The government's acted in a reckless and provocative manner.
Well, I spoke to Francis Moore before I came here, and the tone he was striking was a very conciliatory one. Do you think there's a difference between the words they're saying in public and the attitude they're striking in private in these negotiations? Are there negotiations in good faith, would you say?
What I say is that the strikes are wrong when negotiations are still going on, but the government has acted in a reckless and provocative manner in the way it's gone about these issues. After today's disruption, I urge both sides to get around the negotiating table, put aside the rhetoric, and stop this kind of thing happening again.
It's a statement you've made publicly and you'll make to me, and this will be broadcast obviously, but have you spoken privately to any union leaders and expressed your view to them on a personal level, would you say?
Well, what I say in public and in private to everybody involved in this is get round the negotiating table, put aside the rhetoric and stop this kind of action happening again. These strikes are wrong because negotiations are still going on, but parents and the public have been let down by the government as well, who've acted in a reckless and provocative manner.
You're a parent, I'm a parent, a lot of people watching this will be parents. Has it affected you personally, this action? Has it affected your family, your friends? I mean, and what is the net effect of that going to be on parents having to take a day off work today?
I think parents up and down the country have been affected by this action, and it's wrong at a time when negotiations are still going on. Parents have been let down by both sides because the government has acted in a reckless and provocative manner. I think that both sides should, after today's disruption, get round the negotiating table, put aside the rhetoric and stop this kind of thing happening again.